Hi, everyone. This is Dr. Alana James, and it's my pleasure, real pleasure today to have two people very knowledgeable about the Latinx student population in graduate school. And I think we're all looking forward to hearing about how those students, and probably all students, can benefit from this research. So just before I start, let me remind you that the WooClap for this webinar is https://wooclap.com Latinx. And we already have 4 excellent questions, and you can ask questions there later. We will make sure that they get answered. So with that, let me introduce Dr. Joanne Canales, who I have known for 4 or 5 years now. She was dean at the Texas A&M Corpus Christi when I first met her, and then she went on to be the visiting dean at the Council of Graduate Schools. And I think a large part of what they're saying today may come from that research. So Joanne, I pass it to you.
Thank you, Dr. James. Hello, everyone. I went too far. Okay, so as Dr. James mentioned, I am Joanne Canales, and I was the founding dean in the College of Graduate Studies at Texas A&M University, Corpus Christi. Thank you to those of you who are joining us live, and for our future listeners, thank you as well for viewing the posting of this webinar. We are delighted to be with you today. Due to the consequences of the COVID-19, one of our presenters, Dr. Perez, is having to juggle online teaching from home, as well as 3 young children under the age of 8, and was unable to join us live. I will be acknowledging her shortly and sharing her contributions as well. First, a bit about me. As you learned, first of all, when Dr. James invited us to do this webinar, it was an immediate yes for all of us, not only because of our current roles, but because of our own personal and professional journeys. I was a first-generation college student and therefore graduate student, and if there was a playbook for how to navigate my experiences at a Research One university, I was unaware of it. Consequently, I could write the book on everything that could possibly go wrong while in grad school, because it did. And while I essentially finished the coursework in 1.5 years, I was all but dissertation, or ABD as they say, for several more years before I finally re-engaged with the support of a couple of very caring professors, not to mention my mother's gentle urgings and nudgings. While I did not have a playbook for navigating the academy either, I eventually went on to become a full tenured professor and the founding dean of College of Graduate Studies, as was previously mentioned. My goal was to ensure that the graduate students under my watch would have very different and positive experiences, and work to put structures in place, including resources like Doctoral Net, to facilitate students' progress through the graduate student lifecycle. When I stepped down from that position, I moved to Washington, D.C. to be Dean in Residence of the Council of Graduate Schools, an organization dedicated to serving the graduate education enterprise. And while there, I conducted a study to examine support structures in place for Latinx students throughout their graduate student life cycle, especially at Hispanic serving institutions. The findings of that study and our collective experiences are the basis for today's webinar. And with me today is Dr. Rudy Ortiz. Rudy, can you share a bit about yourself with our audience?
Absolutely. Thank you again, Joanne and Alana, for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here with everyone this morning. So I was born and raised in El Paso, Texas. My parents immigrated from Mexico and settled in that area of West Texas many years ago. Thankfully, they were educated. My grandparents were very staunch supporters of education, and so my parents were well educated and made sure that we all my brothers and I got our education first and foremost. So we were very fortunate in that regard. But throughout my education, I have always been working with different programs that help facilitate the promotion of minority students in higher ed. And so I've been very fortunate in that regard to be a part of these programs. And now, even with the help of Dr. Canales, we have programs on our campus that are designed to facilitate the promotion and progression of our undergraduate and graduate students in different areas as they pursue higher education as well. So been very fortunate in that regard to be able to work with a lot of great people like Dr. Canales to institutionalize these programs on our campus. I'm a physiologist by training. I study metabolism and alterations in metabolism, but I think my greatest passion really is working with students and helping them get through their careers and get advanced degrees. So that's been a real pleasure and honor for me on my campus. I graduated from Texas A&M University, College Station, many years ago. I stayed there for my master's, eventually went on and did my PhD at UC Santa Cruz, and then postdoc at Tulane University Medical School in New Orleans before I signed on my first faculty position as a founding faculty member here at University of California, Merced. And I've been here for almost 16 years now. And in those years, established my research lab, but also many training programs for undergraduate, graduate students as well. So, with that, I want to thank you again for inviting me and letting me share the morning with you.
Thank you, Rudy. And as I indicated earlier, I would like to acknowledge our third contributor to this webinar who was unable to join us. Currently, Dr. Perez is a professor of Chicano Studies at California State University, Fullerton, located in Southern California. It is a comprehensive teaching institution as well as an Hispanic serving institution. She is the Humanities and Social Sciences Coordinator for the College Office of Equity and Diversity. She received her PhD at UCLA, where she also worked in student affairs. And prior to that, she worked for a college outreach program out of University of California, Santa Barbara, and was also an admissions officer at the Stanford School of Medicine. So these previous experiences, as well as her own personal journey as a first-generation college student, have helped to inform her contributions to this presentation. So with that, Rudy, can I ask you to drive, since I obviously flipped to go to the next slide that shows our overview? So we hope that whether you are Latinx graduate students and or working with or supporting Latinx graduate students, you will find some useful nuggets in this presentation. We have 3 objectives for today's webinar. First, one key realization from the study was that we needed to think more broadly about what constitutes a graduate student's life cycle. As we share strategies for navigating each stage, we hope you will think reflectively about your own experiences, irrespective of what stage you find yourself in, and make note if there are gaps that need to be filled. If you are working with graduate students or potential graduate students, we hope you will engage in a diagnostic exercise to examine what is currently in place and what could use some shoring up. Second, we encourage you to ask questions of us. Collectively, we have had a variety of experiences in different disciplines at different institutions in different parts of the country. And if we don't have an answer today, we can certainly get back to you with one. And third, and more importantly, we hope you will gain insights that will be helpful to you in navigating your own academic and non-academic journeys. With that, on to the content. And first, a bit about the study. You can go on to the next. I chose to focus on the Latinx population in graduate schools at Hispanic serving institutions for 4 reasons. HSIs are the largest producers of Latinx students with bachelor's degrees, which should be a natural pipeline to the graduate education enterprise. Second, despite the swell in numbers nationally, the Latinx population is critically underrepresented in graduate education at both the student and faculty levels, and even more critically underrepresented at the administrative levels. Third, there is a paucity of literature focused on the Latinx population to help drive impact. And perhaps the most compelling reason is that the numbers in educational attainment for the Latinx population remain the lowest of all the groups. For every 100 students who complete elementary school, 63 Latinas, 60 Latinos will complete high school. 13 Latinas and 11 Latinos will complete a bachelor's degree. 4 Latinas and 3 Latinos will complete a master's degree. And 0.03 Latinx will complete a doctorate, meaning that not even one for every 100 elementary students will go on to get a terminal degree. These numbers have remained unchanged for several years. In conducting the study and reviewing the data from surveys and telephone interviews, I was struck by the fact that we needed to think more broadly about the life cycle of a graduate student, as I mentioned before. Previously, we would talk about the life cycle in 4 stages: recruitment, enrollment, retention, and completion. For a majority of institutions, the conversation centered around getting them into graduate school. Because I am all about having a practical outcome to the study, my goal was to generate strategies for each of the stages to help students navigate their journey successfully, and institutions create a climate and culture of care to support Latinx students. In so doing, I realized that the first 2 stages of recruitment and enrollment are so intertwined, as are the last 2 stages of retention and completion, as traditionally conceived, which is why you see those clustered together in the center of the chevron. I also realized that there were 2 additional stages we needed to consider: a graduate school readiness stage to help undergraduate students prepare to be competitive for admissions, and a career transition stage to prepare the graduates to be ready for the workforce. So today, we would like to focus on specific strategies in each of those stages. I will be filling in for Dr. Perez on the first 2 stages, and Dr. Ortiz will address the retention, completion, and career transition stages. As we share those strategies, think about your own experiences. Do they align? Were there missed opportunities? If there were, can they still be addressed to shore up some gaps? Or if you are past that stage, perhaps you can share them with others you are mentoring or supporting to help them navigate their own journeys. So on to the first stage, graduate school readiness. Mentors, professors, teaching assistants, which is what TA stands for, all are required to have office hours. Be sure that those office hours are utilized by you. Talk to them about their experiences in grad school. Why did they choose their particular program? What is it that they would recommend that you do based on their own experiences? These are all great opportunities, not just for learning more about graduate school, but also because you are planting seeds with mentors and professors who will eventually be the ones to write letters of recommendation for you. As having been approached on many occasions to write those letters, it is always very helpful to have more insights into the individuals than just a request and a CV. A second point, there will be opportunities provided by your institutions and your programs for social events or programs for speakers, where there will be graduate students who are further along the program than you are. Take these opportunities to attend and mingle with them, greet them, and also ask them how their progress has been in the program. What have they liked about the program? Why did they select the program? And more importantly, what resources have supported them in their progress that you could also take advantage of. A third point, there are many opportunities for undergraduates to engage in research, to engage in internships, and to seek writing opportunities. And you should take advantage of all of these. One excellent example is the McNair Scholars Program. It's an undergraduate program geared towards underrepresented populations who are interested in pursuing doctoral studies. They provide stipends for participation. They include a mentor who will work with you to conduct a research project. There are funds to attend professional conferences and fees for entrance exams for graduate applications, which are often waived for McNair scholars. So those are excellent resources to seek out. If there's a McNair program on your campus, I encourage students to take advantage of it. Some internships are also required by some programs. If not, those opportunities should be sought. Some are paid and some are not. And a good resource for finding out about those are the career centers on each campus. Also, there is a writing center on every campus. Make sure that you take advantage of those as much as possible and seek every opportunity to improve the writing. Not only will it be helpful in the undergraduate experience, but also in graduate school and as a faculty member if you choose to go on to that stage. Another point there is to engage in undergraduate research. The McNair program, as I said, offers those. Sometimes there are independent opportunities with faculty to participate in research. And there are opportunities to, I apologize, I'm getting buzzed by my phone that I thought was silenced. And so I've been a bit distracted. Let me start again. So there are lots of opportunities to engage. One of the things you might think about doing is looking up the faculty, seeing what research they're engaged in, and learning about their research and asking them if there's any opportunities for you to participate. Also, visiting graduate or career centers. They have lots of opportunities that are not very commonly known. And if one asks, one can learn a wealth of information. Sometimes they welcome drop-ins, but calling ahead to schedule a visit can probably get you more one-on-one opportunities. There is financial support for application fees, for test preparation, for fellowships, for assistantships. When I was graduate dean, I worked closely with the Career Center director to have them maintain a repository of all of the graduate assistantships on campus. It facilitated the scavenger hunt for students, and it also made it easier for faculty who are always getting their doors knocked on by students wanting to know what opportunities were out there. Many campuses also offer individual and group campus visits. These are something to be taken advantage of. It's a great opportunity to learn not only about the programs and meet with the faculty, but check out the library, what technology is available, what space is there for students, what kinds of labs are offered if you're in the sciences. And if a campus visit is not possible, a phone or virtual meeting with current students and representatives is also a viable alternative. And then another great point here is to connect with potential advisors. Again, if a campus is not possible, a phone or a virtual meeting is always a good way to go. And what's interesting about that is that once you take that initiative, when opportunities arise, they will remember you and reach out to you to take advantage of those. Moving on to the recruitment and enrollment stage. Again, many institutions hold what are called preview days, and it's a good opportunity to visit, meet with lots of folks, and ask a lot of questions. And the nice thing about that is there are other questions that others may ask that you didn't think to ask. And so there's quite a lot of information that can be attained. Another great resource for learning about institutions and what is available is to speak to alumni from the program. Many of them have had great experiences and love talking about their institutions. And even if they haven't had great experiences, they can be good learning opportunities for everyone as well. What pitfalls to avoid, for example. Asking about resources available to graduate students is always a good idea. Many graduate schools put out newsletters. If you're not subscribed or if you're not prone to reading your university email, be sure you do that because that's usually where those newsletters or news bulletins will go to. And then communicating with department administrators and faculty is also very important. I used to recommend that this go on, especially if, as I used to tell them, life happens, because life will happen. There will be illnesses, unexpected circumstances that arise that may keep you from going to class or even completing the program. And just to stop going to class is not a viable alternative because faculty have no way of knowing why you stopped coming to class. And incompletes have consequences on a record. And with that, I would just share that I had a faculty in my doctoral program who was very strict about not giving incompletes. But in my case, life happened. And so even though she had that rule, I reached out to her, explained the situation, and asked for an extended period of time. And I was clear about how much more time I would like. And she was gracious enough to grant it. I got my grade and life went on. I can't stress enough how important it is to communicate with department administrators and faculty throughout your entire journey. Again, because they will remember you when it's time to write letters, they will be there for you. And then another important point is to consider your priorities and values, and then ask yourself, what do you need to be successful? If it's important for you to be near your family, if you're an important resource for your family, then finding an institution close to home may be very important. And if you are looking to work with a particular population of students, and there's or individuals, and there's an institution that is closer to that population, that might be a consideration. And of course, as always, looking for funding opportunities that that institution has to offer can also be a critical component. So lots of key questions to consider, lots of key points to consider in where you look to enroll in an institution and what kind of program you seek to enroll in. And with that, I'll turn it over to Rudy to talk about retention and completion.
All right. Thank you, Joanne. So with that, as you enter a program, it's important to have a plan from the get-go, and there's a lot of resources online that can help you develop these plans. The one that I have here is an example of what we refer to as the individual development plan. This was partially funded by the National Academies, AAAS, as well as NSF. So this is just one example of where you can find a resource to help develop that plan. But these plans really revolve around short-term and long-term, identifying short-term and long-term goals. This is a good resource and idea to have to get started. Ensure that the lab that you pick to work in is a good fit for you. As Joanne mentioned, finding the right place. You're not going to know until you get there, but hopefully very quickly once you are in your lab, you can figure out whether or not it's a good fit. Because if you find out that the university is not a good fit or the advisor that you pick is not a good fit, you want to do what you can as quickly as possible so you don't lose any time to get into the right situation. And so that's where this idea of a good fit is critically important. Utilize all the resources you can to obtain and develop that plan for completion. And as I mentioned there in the first bullet about developing an IDP, um, your plan may also require input from others. If you've got a significant other, if there's family considerations that you need to think about, um, they they need to provide some input in your plan. And so there are resources beyond just developing a physical plan that should be available to you on campus, usually through graduate division programs that you can get access to help with that plan. Finding very importantly, is finding a good mentor that you can trust and help guide you. This may not be your advisor. Mentors don't always have to be your advisors. This is just somebody who has gone through the program, through the process, and can give you good feedback. Somebody that you can trust. And these mentors can sometimes be identified by working with your graduate offices, graduate group offices. So make that an important part of helping you develop a team. Develop good academic practices early. Many times when you transition from an undergraduate program to a graduate program, you get lazy, develop poor study habits, so on and so forth. And you can't afford that to do that in graduate school. So make sure that you develop good practices early. Among these good practices include finding a plan to maintain good work-life balance. It's important that you're happy where you are, and so making sure that you're taking care of yourself, your mental health, your physical health is part of your plan, and that goes into maintaining this work-life balance. So don't ignore yourself. Don't make this all about the academics. Make sure that you think about yourself as well, because if you're not doing well, you won't perform well. Get engaged with other students and activities at your institutions, especially if it's a new institution. Most students will do their undergraduates in one place and then go to a new institution for the graduate studies. And so you want to leverage the students and other resources that are at your new institution to help you engage there and get comfortable. This is all part of building a peer network, and then it's important for support later on. And so getting that network going early on is really important. And those networks can also not only be developed locally, but also nationally through professional societies. So keep that in mind, and that's an important part of being part of professional societies in your field, because those networks can last a long time. As you transition through your career, you want to keep going back to your plan. The plan that you developed, and I mentioned in the previous slide, should have a long-term component to it as well. And so keep referring back to it. While that's not specifically here, keep that in mind that those plans should go for or have a long-term component to it. And it's always evolving. You're going to be in graduate school 4 or 5 years. And over those 4 or 5 years, a lot can happen. And so things like new opportunities that come up, that can impact that plan. And it could impact it in a good way, preferably. It is in a good way. And so you're always wanting to revisit that. Participate in professional development opportunities on your campus. This is going to also help you stay engaged, as I mentioned before. And so being part of the academic community is really important as you go through your careers, especially in graduate school. Pursue all the internship opportunities that you can. You can be presented with some unique opportunities as you go through your careers. And when these pop up, you've got to take advantage of those. Find the courage to step out of your comfort zones and take advantage of those. Use your mentors and networks to help you not just find those opportunities, but obtain those opportunities. So a lot of times there'll be a need for letters of recommendation, for example. And so developing those strong relationships with your mentors, your advisors, and your other networks are going to be important to help you not just find opportunities, but to obtain them. Again, those networks don't always have to be local. Professional societies are a good place to have those. Peers that you meet at meetings, national meetings, can remain as part of your network. And then when you take advantage of opportunities, if you meet new people, they can be part of your network as well. So everything you do is helping you to develop your network. Develop the courage and sense of adventure to take advantage of unique opportunities as they come along. Preferably that they're outside of your comfort zone. And so I mentioned this before. This is really hard when you get very comfortable in your setting. Everything's working well. You don't want to disturb how everything is flowing and how everything is going. But then all of a sudden, a unique opportunity comes up, and it may require you to be gone for a summer or be gone for a semester. This is where working with your mentors and getting guidance from those that you trust will help you develop that courage and that sense of adventure so that you can take advantage of those opportunities. Because remember, you're just building up your network, and a big network is really important. So with that, there's 3 mantras that to live by: show up, do good work, and stay engaged. So here's a list of additional resources we developed to help you go out and try to find some funding. And a lot of these may be oriented around biomedical agencies, but they don't have to be. Work with your mentors, your graduate groups, to seek funding opportunities in a whole bunch of different places. But keep in mind, the Ford Foundation, for example, has a number of different funding opportunities at the pre-doc level, dissertation year level, and for postdocs. The National Science Foundation, through the Graduate Student Research Program, have a number of opportunities as well. And while these might be STEM-oriented, there are other agencies that provide funding for other disciplines. NIH has a whole series of programs as well, like IMSD, which is for graduate students, but pre-doc program is the F31. GRISE is for graduate students, and these are funded through the campuses. So it's important to know what funding opportunities lie on your campus. For example, the University of California also, because it's a large system, has similar programs for pre-docs, dissertation years, and postdocs. So if you're at a large university system, make sure that you scour all the resources on your system's webpage to see what's available for you. Your campus's graduate division may also have a lot of internal funding. So make sure that you're in contact with people within your graduate program and your graduate division on your campuses to see what all the opportunities that they have. And they would also have a large resource of opportunities that are available nationally as well. There's a lot of agencies and professional societies like American Heart, American Physiological, American Society of Nutrition, so on and so forth, that would have also funding opportunities. So this is another important reason why you should be a member of a professional society, because they would have some funding for you as well. So, and a lot of times that funding is only available to members. So it's a good idea to stay engaged with professional society. And so here's a list of 3 resources that you'll have access to that provide more details on how to pursue the PhD, and which includes looking for funding.
So thank you, Rudy. Let me add that if we could go back to the slide for a second, the professional societies often have travel scholarships to support student travel to conferences, which is another reason to stay engaged. And I wanted to say just a little bit about the last lecture. That is the title of a talk of a retiring professor. In the case of Professor Posh, it was literally his last lecture, as he died shortly after that. But he wanted to leave a legacy of lessons, and I recommend this book to every graduate student that has ever crossed my path. And there's some wonderful experiences that he shared in that book, and at the core of it is a life lesson. For example, being open to criticism, which we're not often prone to be, the impact of a simple handwritten thank you note, the value of an ask, making a dream a reality. And I cannot emphasize enough Dr. Ortiz's final point on his career transition slide: the show up, do good work, and stay engaged. You don't just want to go back to individuals when you need letters of recommendation or ideas. You want to stay connected throughout the experience. So networking is vital to your success as a graduate student and your success thereafter. And now we're at the point of questions. And welcome your questions. Alana, we can't hear you.
You're muted.
Now, better? We had some questions come in to www.wooclop.com/Latinx. So 4 now, but anybody who's watching this by recording knows that you can put a question in later, and every so often we go through them and look for new ones and make sure those people that there's a document we do every so often that is all the student questions, so you can find your questions answered whenever you have them. Anyway, what would you say is the most important part of engaging with work as a graduate student?
I'll tackle that one. First of all, if you can find work on campus, that is ideal, because then you can stay connected to the academic community and to your faculty. So there are 3 opportunities, at least 3 types of assistantships pretty much on every campus. One is the research assistantship. It's pretty much usually tied to a faculty member and some grant. And so if your interest is aligned with theirs, it's an opportunity to work more closely with someone and even get engaged in their publications. The second type is a teaching assistantship, where you would likely work with an undergraduate population of students in your discipline or perhaps another topic of interest. And that is a good way to learn how to teach. I would encourage that you pursue some pedagogy training to help you as a teaching assistant. And then there's a third type of assistantship called an administrative assistantship. And you can work in an office. For example, I had several graduate students work in the graduate college, and they learned and engaged in all kinds of activities with me, from planning events to doing research, to meeting faculty. And again, it was a great opportunity to stay engaged. So those are 3 different types. Some are in the provost office, the president's office, in career services. And so the wider net you can cast, getting to know people on our campus, the better off you will be and have access to more resources, obviously. Those are 3 ideas. Rudy, do you have some?
No, I agree. That's pretty much all the
So in the mix-up earlier, we had a little conversation about that question. And one of the students commented that in an ideal world, your trajectory through your doctoral work or your master's work would coincide at some point with your trajectory onto the job, that they wouldn't necessarily be as here's one and here's another. And so for a person who's trying to engage perhaps in a non-academic career, we can encourage them to look to see if there's something out in the industry world that suits them, that would be a position, a company they might want to work for. A great way to figure out whether or not that's an environment you want to work in is to intern there or to work part-time there. Doesn't matter what the job is. It could be a completely scruffy level job. You'll learn so much about what goes on. It will help form your later decisions. And you'll know also what you might need to be adding on to what you're doing if it is a good fit and you want your trajectory to end up there. So that's a possibility too for our non-academic people. What steps would you recommend to further oneself towards leadership roles in higher education? For example, director, VP, president.
So depending on what stage you are in, taking advantage of opportunities to serve on search committees, for example, engage in governance structures, so a graduate student association, a professional organization association, all of those help to scaffold your opportunities for future leadership. There's also a lot of leadership opportunities to take advantage of, and your faculty can provide some guidance. Oftentimes, if your graduate school has a news bulletin, those opportunities will be there. And professional organizations also offer leadership. Any opportunity you have to engage in those leadership trainings is a good idea. And also as part of the career transition, I would recommend that at every opportunity you seek professional development on your own campus. The graduate school will often have it, and they also have it for faculty, and I'm sure would welcome you attending as well. But there's all kinds of topics out there that can enhance your background and your understanding of leadership. And the more exposure you get in those arenas, I think the better prepared you will be.
Yeah, and I'll just add that a lot of professional societies have their own leadership programs that you can sign up for, but there's also a lot of opportunities for leadership within professional society.
So volunteer is always a good thing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Recently, the Council of Graduate Schools regional meetings have had panels from students who were part of their graduate council. And it's impressive, the level of leadership that these students show up with after they've worked for a year trying to solve problems on campus, interfacing with people of all kinds. It clearly helps with everything about just how you present to the world and all of that. And if you're a doctoral student and you haven't yet decided, especially if you're in the humanities or social sciences, I recently did a survey of dissertations, and there were some very interesting ones where somebody was studying their field, in this case, performing arts, and they found people in the president's VP, vice provost director's level who had performing arts background, and they interviewed them on what that was like in leadership. Oh, did that person learn a lot about obviously this person had a clear trajectory. She wanted to go there. But it was a great dissertation. It was very well done, and it clearly got her to somewhere else she wanted to go. So look at what you can do with your research that's going to get you someplace you have your eye on.
So to that point, Elena, I would add that another good strategy is to look to people that you admire and you would like to emulate and Google them, look at what their experiences have been, set up an appointment to have a conversation with them. And it's also good icebreakers at events where you happen to run into them and say, I understand you got your degree in X and you went to X institution. what was it about that was so positive? How did that help you get to your current position? So all of those are good questions to keep in your toolkit to help you in your trajectory.
And as somebody who gets those questions once in a while, I'm always flattered. And once, I mean, that person has me, right? It's like, what an easy way to get the most out of somebody. Just start with a little bit of knowledge about who they really are as a person.
Right.
Our next question, how to pass hour-long exams?
Can you repeat the question?
I think, well, it says how to pass long exams, but I'm wondering if it meant to be how to pass hour-long exams or just passing exams. Let's just talk about what it takes to really do a good job with exams.
Study a lot and early.
So there are lots of kinds of exams. There's, I think more institutions and programs are going to take home exams, which I find particularly useful. And then there are some institutions who are still into their 4 8-hour long exams in isolation, where you just write on end about the topic that they're presenting. I would say most of these usually provide some questions ahead of time. And if they don't, then that's another opportunity to engage with alumni and students who are further along than you are to get a better understanding of what the questions were like and what strategies they used. So things like having an outline with bullet points for possible topics that you could write about might be helpful. If they allow you to bring in something chewy, not anything crunchy, especially if you're going to be with others in the room. Stay hydrated. So I say that on the one hand, and on the other hand, that has consequences if you're drinking a lot of water. So you want to balance all of those things out and ask, will there be breaks in between? So you can plan for that.
Smart.
Can I assume that the question is in reference to a dissertation exam, a qualifying exam?
Maybe.
Yeah. If that's the case, then, talking to your committee, as you develop your PhD committee, talk to your committee members a lot before your qualifying exam. And they'll give you a sense of the materials that you'll be responsible for knowing. And in some cases, they'll even give you some practice questions to give you an idea of the type of question that you can expect. So knowing all of that before you go into your qualifying exam is very helpful, because you don't want to go in cold.
No, you want to reduce anxiety at every level.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and practice if you can. Talk in front of people, just the things that if it's an oral situation, you don't want to freeze up just because you're as scared at the moment. So practice. 3-minute thesis and that kind of thing is helpful for that. Are there institutions with little or no racial or cultural discrimination on campus? How do I find them?
I think that would be utopia.
Yeah.
Sad to say, it's going to exist everywhere. What you want to look for at least are pockets in your program where you know that you will be supported, not just in terms of what the degree requirements are, but personally as well. Programs where there is what I'm calling a circle of care with folks who are attending to personal needs as well as the educational needs. So I'm sorry I don't have a yes, there definitely is one out there, and here's where you should go. But I will say that there are pockets on every campus that you can look for, which is another reason to do site visits, talk to current graduate students and alumni to learn what those resources are.
Yeah.
Rudy, any other?
No, I think Joanne hit all the main points there.
I have a question about that. Is it a situation that is is it changing in a positive direction for our underrepresented students? And do you have things that they should keep in mind if they encounter racial or cultural discrimination?
So what I advise, I tell folks, and primarily because this is what I've experienced, that when they experience those incidences, they have three options. They can, on the one hand, go ballistic and either go on the attack, or they can storm out of the room, or they can seek to understand. And while the last one might be the hardest one to do, it often is the one that will gain the most traction. So I'm going to share a personal story because it is so insightful. And this goes back to actually looking for a position. And actually, I wasn't looking for this position. They reached out to me because of a need that they had and experience that I had in my background. But it was an institution that was located and I will just say this, in a Bible Belt part of the country. And I was so naive at the time, I didn't know exactly what that meant. So I went on the interview anyway and did the usual round of meeting with all of the constituencies, and then found myself in the room with the chair of the search committee, who was also the department chair where this position would be housed. And he said, "How did your visit go?" and all of those niceties, and then said, "I have a question to ask." And he hemmed-hawed a lot, and finally he just blurted out the question, and he said, "Well, are you pure?" And so, the first thing that came to my head was, people said I was going to Bible Belt country. What exactly is he asking me? And so I waited for a moment because I wasn't sure how to respond. And then he started filling in the silent space and asked me if Canales was my married name, and a series of related questions. And essentially, what he was trying to understand was, how could a Latina female have a doctorate degree when his experience with other Latinos was not that? And he was just trying to understand, but I realized he didn't have the language to ask the question. And so, I could have stormed out of the room. I could have filed a complaint about the inappropriate question. I chose to do neither. And instead, I stayed. We had a conversation. I took the job, and he turned out to be the most wonderful, supportive mentor I've ever had. So I always encourage folks, seek to understand where it's coming from rather than getting all fired up and creating an explosive situation. Sometimes that's not always possible, but when it is, that's the path I recommend.
Wow, that's a tremendous story. What a tremendous story. With that, I will end the recording. We thank everybody who's watching by recording. Remember that you can go back to the first slide, and actually, I think we have email addresses here, don't we?
We do.
So,
and we encourage you to reach out to us. We're perfectly comfortable getting back to you. Don't hesitate if you think of something afterwards.
Isn't that lovely? Thank you both so much for being here. With that, let me end the recording, and then if you'll hang out for just a second, we'll say goodbye to everyone watching. When I get the thing to give me a minute where it'll turn it off. There we go.